Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 590 for the 16th of Tammuz in a regular year. So we've often heard this idea that man was created in the image of God. We see this, it comes up in the Bible. That's the origin of this idea. But what does it really mean? So we know that we often use anthropomorphic terms to refer to God, and we've talked about how this is at least partially in order for us to be able to relate to God and to have some kind of something, like we look at ourselves and that can give us some semblance of something when we talk about God. But what does it really mean? What does it mean that we were created in the image of God? And this exactly is the topic of today. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And for context, the way that this came about is, if you've been following along in the last couple of episodes, we really talked about this idea of the uniqueness of the creation of man and how the human being was different than all other creatures, where other creatures were created exclusively through God's breath, which is a more superficial manifestation of God's life force. It's called the spirit of God's mouth, but it's a little bit more superficial. It's like it's a concrete manifestation of God's breath in verbal articulation, just like our speech is a kind of like superficial manifestation of our insides, versus man is unique in the sense that he was created specifically through God's breath. It says that God breathed a man's soul into him. And we talked about how breath is something more internal, like true breathing, like if you just blow into a balloon, or if you just like breathe out, like take a long exhale, this is going to be a lot deeper manifestation of you. It's coming from a more internal place in you versus if you were to just speak some words. So there's something about man that really is unique. And this is really this idea of how it is that we say that we were created in the image of God. This is what it's really talking about in a really deep way. Not so much that it's like we're kind of like cookie cutter like images of God, and it's like we look at ourselves and we talk about God's different character traits, and we have these character traits too. Like that's kind of like one way of looking at it on this very kind of like very basic way of understanding. But in today's Tanya, we're actually going to come to a deeper appreciation of what this means, a deeper appreciation of what it means that God breathed his life into us from a deep, essential place. So we got a little intro into this topic in yesterday's episode, where we spoke at length about the Tetragrammaton and what the deeper meaning behind the Tetragrammaton, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and how the spheros are contained within that. And in the episode before that, we actually contrasted this name with the other very, big essential name of God, which is the name of Elohim. And we talked about how the name Elohim, it can be thought of as being a more superficial name of God. It alludes to the more external aspects of God. It alludes to the way God creates the world and everything in it, and all of the worlds, the angels included, through speech. Versus when we talk about the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Tetragrammaton, this is alluding to a more internal, inner aspect of God. This is where we come from, human beings. This is where our life force comes from. So that's what we're going to be speaking about today, is about taking everything that we learned yesterday about the Tetragrammaton, about the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in mind, and how that relates to God's attributes, and how that relates to a person, to the soul of a person, and see how these character traits, these characteristics that are present in man, in God, in the breakdown of these four letters, are present in man as well. So with that being said, I think we can get straight into the text. And for context, we are still in chapter 4 of Iggeres HaTeshuva, and we're going to be concluding chapter 4 today. So the Alter Rebbe begins and he says that now we're going to look at the soul of man. And so then by way of analogy, but to infinite degree, there's an infinite separation. So it's not like that we're actually God, right, God forbid. But when we look at the soul of man, we can see a parallel. We can see that there's an aspect of the divine soul which God blew into us. And we have within us, like every person has within them, an aspect of the hidden mind. So what is this aspect of the hidden mind? This aspect of the hidden mind is alluded to in the letter Yud. So this is the idea of chokhmah, like this kind of this intuition. Like when you know things, like do you ever get this like intuitive thought, like you know something before you can put it into words? That's your intuition at play. That's your chokhmah, and that's alluded to in this initial letter Yud, which has in its power to come out into revelation in order to really understand this in a full sense. So again, if you ever get this like insight, this like initial spark of intuition, even if in the moment you don't really know what it is that you're grasping at, it does have the ability, that intuitive thought has the ability to expand itself and to really become more fleshed out through your understanding and thinking. Each person according to his measure, according to the ability of their mind. So, some people are better at articulating their thoughts and really fleshing out their thoughts more, and some people maybe less so, but every person can do it to some extent. And the more a person deepens in their minds and really widens and broadens their understanding and their knowledge to really try to understand God's greatness, then this is hinted at in the letter of Hey. So this letter of Hey has the width to it, like we were saying. So just like it's like when it comes to God has, when we talk about the name Yod Kei Vav Kei in its original source, so that's like the origin of Bina. Now we're talking about it, how it's manifest in man. So in man, the more that we use our intellects to really try to understand God, to really try to come to a sense of full understanding of God and think about this God and deepen our thought and widen our thought, like really get deeply into it, this corresponds to the letter Hey, which has the split to it, and it also has a length, as we said, which means again this idea of the drawing down from above to below to what does it mean in this case? This means to take from our minds and our understandings to have something come out of it. That the more we meditate about the greatness of God, then what will grow from this is a sense of love and fear and all the offshoots that come out of this in our mind and in the recesses of our heart. And afterwards, this will come out and become revealed in our hearts. And this will bring us to serving God in a real way, through being involved in Torah and mitzvahs, with our mouth, with our voice, and with speech or with action. And this is the aspect of the Vav and the Hey for us. So again, so just like when we spoke about from God's perspective, for God, the Yud and the Hey are more internal. They're more of this Chochmah and Bina for God that's on the inside. And then the Vav and the Hey, the lower Vav and Hey, have to do with the way that he manifests here in the world and creates the world through and the way he relates to the world through his emotions and his speech. So for us too, for man, we also have this aspect of the Yud and the Hey being the Chochmah and Bina, which is when we get this like intuition, and then we further elaborate upon this intuition and meditate upon the ideas. Specifically here, we're talking about the ideas of God and understanding of God. And then there's the last two letters of the Vav and the Hey, and that's where that meditation becomes practical, and we actually feel emotions, and we feel a sense of fear and love of God in our hearts, and that we actually serve God in action as well. And now the Alter Rebbe concludes with a final point, where he tells us that this whole idea, this contemplation that brings us to understanding the greatness of God actually comes from Torah. It also comes from Torah, but because Torah comes from Chochmah, which is the aspect of the Yud of the name of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton. So basically the idea is that really everything comes from Torah ultimately, even our own understanding of everything and our own like intuitions and insights about God, because God is because everything comes from Torah. That's the basic idea. So that's the end of the section. So in sum, just the basic idea that we're learning about today is to have a deeper understanding of what it means when we say that we were created in the image of God. Like, what does this mean exactly? Does it mean that like God somehow looks like us, or is like a bigger version of us or something like that? So we came to really understand it on a core level, that what it means is that when we look at the Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, which is like the most essential name of God, the Tetragrammaton, it actually contains within it, it hints at the different attributes of God, and these different attributes of God are found within man as well on this level, and it can help us actually relate to God. So we can use these tools to relate to God. We can use our chokhmah, our bina, and our emotions and our speech and our actions to relate to God. So that's it for today, and tomorrow we're going to move on to a new chapter. We're going to do an entire chapter tomorrow, actually, chapter 5, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the Iggeres HaTeshuva podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the Iggeres HaTeshuva project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, iggereshat.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.